September 11th before it happened.
Yeah. Okay. So we're live again.
Okay.
So continue.
And the other thing I want to do, Boggie, before we go, is send me the link for people to watch so I can post it on Facebook as well.
Yep. I'll send it to you now. I'm just getting it for you now.
And will you please continue the story as you and the soldiers went for a beer at the pub because we thought that
well, because we thought we'd had a bad session. So what happened was when it all kicked off and it all happened, we were just a bit shell-shocked. But after a little while, we started to think, well, let's see if we can do this again. So we started to experiment. So one of the early experiments was, where's Bin Laden? Everybody wanted to know where Bin Laden was. I knew where he was. I'd already put a little cross on the map. I knew where he was. He was hiding up the Khyber Pass. I knew that. But I thought, let's see if we can find using this method. So I worked with Dave and I took Dave forward. And I just said, the question I asked him was, will they find Bin Laden? Now, his answer doesn't sound that startling today, but it was at the time. It sounded nonsense. So I said, will they find Bin Laden? And he said, they're not even looking for him. You know, we're all more involved in this than we realise, which sounded nonsense at the time. And then he said, anyway, they are getting ready to invade Iraq. And I said, who? And he said, America. And we actually laughed. We both laughed. It sounded so ridiculous. He said, they will say they've got chemical weapons, but they know they haven't. That was his exact words. Now, the bit that will interest you is he then said, there is a 23-point plan to take over the Middle East. After Iraq, they will go after Iran and Syria, the two countries that are forever coming up. They said they'll go after that. So we've thought at some point we need to go and find out the rest of the 23 points, you know, the other, 20 points now. We need to go and find out what they are, what are the steps. So that really, when it started to come out that they were going into Iraq, we started to think we're onto something. So we started to predict all sorts of world events. Then we started to do it with individuals, take friends forward, take my clients forward 5 years.
Oh, and my goodness.
It was amazing. So one of my early ones was a young lady called Mandy, and I took her forward. She saw herself with her husband, and she said what he was wearing and what job he had. She saw her future kitchen. And she met him a few weeks later. She was literally at a wedding, and there's the guy. He's come strolling in. And she thought, I've never spoke to that guy, but he's my husband.
Oh.
So she's sending me frantic texts saying, he's here. And I was saying, who's here? He's here. And I said, look, don't do anything. Let nature take its course. But he actually said at a later date, as soon as I saw her, I knew I'd marry her. And I went to the wedding. I have got a little rule that if I take you forward and you see your future wife or husband, you do have to invite me to the wedding. It's just a little rule. So we started to look at business, because the business world is changing, work, everything we could think of. We started to experiment, and it was consistently accurate, not the odd fluke. It consistently accurate, consistently worked. So this got really, really exciting. So one of the things we saw, I took somebody forward, one of the self-help gurus, and he said, Anne, you got a 3-book deal. I was completely unknown. You don't get a 3-book deal when you're unknown. Within weeks, I had that 3-book deal. Wow. I saw him with a TV show. Within weeks, he'd been offered the TV show. It just kept, and it was consistently, it's almost as if we were tapping into the future and bringing it into our current consciousness, which you'll understand, Paul, from what you're saying with the Tao. This is exactly what you'll understand. We're tapping into it and bringing it into our current consciousness. Now, this is the bit we miss when people are trying to manifest. How do you bring it back? People have these wavy, vague, when you're looking at quantum physics, everything's a bit wavy, and it's this wavy little idea you've got out there somewhere. People often say to me, oh, I'm good at manifesting. I needed a pair of red shoes, and I manifested them. And I go, let me know when you manifest the $5 million, because that would be handy. But what we're doing is bringing it from the future into our current consciousness. So these things, so I was expecting people to see their future go off, but everybody I was working on was phoning me really quickly saying, it's happened, this has happened, that's happened. I'm actually just moved into a house that I just saw my husband in the back garden, and I thought, that's not my back garden. And somehow or other, it finds you or you find it. But I ended up finding that house, the first one I looked at, and there it was. And I'm living there now. We consistently do it for all sorts of things. And it's so the book came out and it sold really, really well in lots of different countries. So you can imagine my phone's going crazy with people saying, I want to try this. I want to do this. When you come into Spain, when you come into Australia. And I thought, I can't be everywhere. So I thought maybe I should teach a few other people to do it. I think in my mind, I thought 6. So anyway, we're up to about 900 practitioners now.
Wow.
In 19 countries. So sometimes we've only got 1 or 2 people, sometimes we've got more. And it was just in an incredible journey. And the reason why I think it's an incredible journey, I think the time's right. I think the time's really right. You look at the amount of movies now about slipping around in time, changing the past, jumping into a different future. There's so many. There wasn't that many 15 years ago, back 20 years ago, and you could count them on one hand. Now, the amount of movies that cover this subject, because I think we've grown enough consciously to understand the concept. So that's why we're ready for future life progression and to understand slipping around in time, changing the past, changing the future. Before we were in survival mode, it was just survive, get food, fight off wild animals. We've been in survival mode for a long, long time. We're now coming into a time where we can say, no, that's not what I want. Now I can shape my future. We're not victims. You go back to ancient times, they felt like victims of the gods or whatever. Victims of how the weather would be. Now we're ready to start taking control, and that's why people are quite agitated. They're agitated about the environment because they're now aware that they can make it nicer, easier, better. They can change things. So we worked in so many different areas. It's been phenomenal. It's been the most exciting journey. Working with this. And yeah, you go and take a peek at your future, and incredible things happen.
How do you feel like when you're what the mystery of seeing whatever, like we can align this to manifestation and align this to having that higher goal, and then that it's almost like that priestess drawing down the moon. You're drawing down the energy to come towards you. What you learned from this work that is the mystery, because that seems to be that gap, that missing element that people can't achieve. They can't get to there. So how do we integrate what we're wishing to come true?
You ask great questions. It's basically
female questioner.
This is such an exciting subject matter. I mean, I'm humbly honored that this is a beautiful topic.
Well, in a way, you answered it. It's to do with energy. I mean, it's like when I take people forward, I get them to really feel it. I mean, if you can feel what it's like, you will make it happen. So you think yourself 10 years ago, something you struggled with that you find easy now. If you could go back in time and give the 10 years ago you that feeling, this is what it feels like to be brilliant at that, you do it in a heartbeat. So it's almost like we're tapping into that energy. So what I do is, while I have the person in the future, I build a really strong anchor. I bring it back to their current time, and I show them how they can fire it off every day. Every day they can create that energy. And when you've got that energy, you attract it to you. So this is why we start to get coming to us what we need. It starts to just come to us.
I feel like that's, for me, is going to integrate, I think, on so many levels, like in this next phase of life that I'm in, just to, and the word that came up was embodiment. Like for me, I've been working on, in my own spiritual quest journey, has being an embodiment. So it's like imagining the infinite as inside of your center. So it's not like we're pulling down from the future, but it is within us. And then if we have access to this infinite portal of everything, infinite everything is kind of the name of my business, then as we embody those qualities, they manifest in our lives. So it's kind of a different approach. It's an inner outward approach versus like a future come in, and they both work. And the other thing, Wayne Dyer's been coming up a lot for me lately, and he has that will change your thoughts, change your reality, draw it to you. And a lot of what you're saying is like a further manifestation. It's like building on his work, because he was just at that beginning. I was just talking about this last night about the, you know, when we just first started, that there was the law of attraction, and we can shape our reality. Like he was like the cutting edge, like of people bringing that. And this is like, not only can we shape our reality, but we can listen to, yeah, I don't know, we can co-create. I don't know, how would you describe it? Because my words are losing me, so go for it. Yeah. So
Well, I think we do.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we zoom off into the future, tap into that energy, and actually, if you can tap into the energy of your future self, you can work with that energy. So I know what you mean about drawing it down. To me, I'm more stepping into that future energy. I like to step into that energy and really feel it. So that's what I do. I get people to step into the energy, feel it, keep that energy, bring it back to now. Every day, we kind of connect that energy. We do some sort of an anchor where we can create that every day. It works. It just works so well.
So talk about an anchor and what that is. What is an anchor?
An anchor is anchor. So let me think. I'll tell you a universal anchor. When somebody's, if you go to a funeral, you walk up to the bereaved person, you'll touch them on the shoulder and say, "I'm sorry for your loss." You always touch them on the shoulder. It seems like a universal anchor, and you could go up to them years later. When they're over this, you touch them on the shoulder, they'll immediately have that feeling of grief. You can actually put anchors into somebody. This is really, really naughty, but most women have, their husband has a friend that they don't like. That the women will go, "If only he didn't mix with that John, he's a nightmare." You know, whenever my husband goes off with him, they go drinking and they behave badly. Most women have a mate they don't like. This is really naughty, but I do teach women this, so do forgive me. What I do say, whenever something comes on the telly that he can't stand, there'll be somebody, for some reason, my dad couldn't stand Petula Clark. I've got no idea what she'd done wrong. She's a perfectly nice woman, I'm sure, but he couldn't stand. But whoever it is, so say they come on and they go, "Oh, there's that football, I can't stand him." Find one point on them. Could be their wrist, and you just touch them on them and go, "Yeah, he's really annoying, that footballer." Whatever it is, "I can't stand that song or that advert." You keep to that point, becomes connected. It becomes an anchor of all the things they don't like. So when they go, "Oh, I'm thinking of going out with John tonight," you touch that point and go, "Really? You want to go out with John?" And they go, "You know, actually he's starting to really get on my nerves." And they start to go off John. So that's a naughty way of using an anchor.
But it sounds like very hypnotherapy based. Like,
it's very NLP, and the Daoist tricks did the same for healing. In essence, it's like the tapping. The original things of tapping was that if you wanted to, like, you know, I gave you a really good healing session, and I feel really, really good. I say, well, okay, well, tap your, left shoulder, or find a point and tap and hold that point and feel that point. And in NLP, they do the same thing. It's like you want to create a confidence trigger. So they say pull your nose, or touch your ear, or stroke your eyebrow, whatever it is. You when you have that feeling of, so whatever you want to generate, you have that feeling, and you touch that area. Now I'll go there very quickly and I'll come out. There's it's a bit of the naughty side, but in Daoist sexual yoga, in the Daoist sexual yoga, is what the Daoist princesses would do. They would find what aroused a man, and they would touch them in a certain place, and then they would do that a couple of times, and that would naturally arouse that man. Or for a man, you can do that to a woman. You find that natural place, so it can be anywhere on the body. It doesn't have to be a sexual place, but you creating that trigger that then can activate, it's about activating the emotion. So you can do that for yourself, you can do that for other people, whether it's, like I say, whether it's a naughty thing or whether it's a good thing, or, whether it's for positivity. They're all about triggers. So it's the same thing with...
It is, yeah.
What I'm talking about is you create that anchor, that trigger, and that will grow, so you get that feeling, you think of, the most powerful you've ever been, or the most happiest you've ever been, the most grounded you've ever been, the most in your powers you've ever been, and you create a trigger. You tap an area, and you make that your button, your anchor, as Anne says.
I think
that has been people have been using this as a pickup technique, and it's like if people go to Vegas, they now go, oh, you're the fifth guy tonight to come up and try and anchor, and I don't fancy you, and that ain't gonna work, you know, because I think when these things are misused, they do backfire. But Vegas is apparently full of funny little guys going up to women and trying to anchor these feelings, and it don't work. It's not working for them. It works in that context that you just said, that you've had a relationship with somebody or something's happened, and you can fire off that trigger again because you're creating that memory. But some complete stranger coming up to you, but the way I often use
it, doesn't it? There has to be permission. That's the key. Anything only works if you give it. Even with hypnosis, is that you can only hypnotize somebody if they actually voluntary or involuntary give you permission. There has to be permission. That's why things like I don't know if Michelle will know this person, but Darren Brown. You know. He's and Paul McKenna. I know you know Paul McKenna. I don't know if Michelle, but these are people. They're not just hypnotists. They use NLP. They use techniques, and there's certain things they can do that, like they'll talk to somebody on a train, and they'll touch them, you know, on the wrist or something, and they'll say something in a certain way, and suddenly that person doesn't know who they are or where they are, and it's just activating certain mechanisms that are within the subconscious. And that's what it's all about. So when people say, "Oh, you've got to like with faith healing, you've got to believe in it for it to be true," it's like, duh, yeah, but that's the point. You know, if you actually believe in this, when the FBI, did many of these experiments, but when the FBI takes, I think it was 2,000 people in Washington and got them to focus, they just told them they're going on a spiritual retreat in a spiritual conference, and they got 2,000 people to focus on meditation, peace, and love for a weekend, and they can drop the crime rate by 25% because this then goes on to quantum physics. But
they've actually done that in 41 cities so far, and every time it's dropped by. It's the Maharishi effect. It totally works. That energy. It only takes 1% of the population to change the consciousness. It really, really works. But that one of my positive anchors would be somebody's lacking in confidence, and you get them to hold their hand out in front of them as if they're going to receive something, and I get them to think of all these times when they did have confidence. Might be when they pass their cycling test, or when they sing a song, or when they're laughing with their friends. I get them to get all the times they did well, all the times, and I get them to all the energy of this to pour into their hand and then make a fist. And then whenever they need to feel confident, I just get them to make a fist and say to them, you've captured all that energy. So when they go for the job interview, or they've got something that makes them nervous, they just make the fist. It's great. Yeah. Anchors are fabulous. So we create a powerful anchor in the future and bring it back to the present. And I think the change in energy is what is part of it. Partly because they've seen the future and they now know which way to go, because we've got far too much choice these days. But it's also they've got that energy, and they actually walk different. You know, they walk different. They act different.
Indeed. Right. Okay. Right. So I want to direct you a little bit. Well, one of the two things, like we also said we'd talk about, we sort of going into it, is spirituality in business. What does that mean to you?
Oh, I love this.
I knew Michelle would like that one.
But it's an interesting one. I mean, let me start off by saying I had a businessman come to me a few years ago, and he said, since I've been spiritual, my business has gone downhill. And I said, I can really understand that, because what can happen is people sit there and say, oh, well, if it's meant to happen, it will happen, and the universe is going to do it all for me. And they get a bit wishy-washy when they still need to get out there, and they can start being too nicey-nicey. And sometimes you've still got to get off your butt. I mean, I've had a girl contact me once, and she said, you know how to do this. I think I should be a millionaire and have a big house, and you need to tell me how I can get it. And I said, lady, if I knew how to make £1 million fall out the sky, I wouldn't be working 14-hour days. Which she didn't find that funny at all. She's actually come out with some really odd things, but she had that thing where spiritual people can be a bit waiting for the universe to deliver. And I see it in a bit of a different way. I see it that, you know, the two are now merging. Before, you had the business people, and business is business. Don't bring all that weirdy stuff around me. And then you had the spiritual stuff going, well, they're too hard-boiled, and look at them, and they're just out to make money. But it is starting to merge, and it's quite recently that, I mean, in the last 10 years, I've had a lot of business people come to me, a lot of them, and they really listen to what I'm saying. And they've realised that business is tough these days. In your granddad's day, he made tractors or whatever he did, he could have done that his entire life. You can't do that anymore. Whatever you do is going to change. It will change. And so you need to have the edge. And change is very expensive, and it can bring a company down if they get it wrong. So we've got to be able to anticipate the future. Now, the way I like to see it is, if you feel your work is worthy and adds something to the world, then you want it to go well. And if you can find some tools that help you to get that out there, then brilliant, let's do it. You know, let's find. So a lot of people are thinking this way. If they believe what they do is worthy, then they will look for tools. And there's been a number of studies that have found that people at the top, at the absolute top of the tree, use their intuition. They talk about gut feelings. They talk about having an instinct. The people lower down that get stuck don't. They're relying on facts, figures, and charts. So people like Richard Branson said once, I use my instinct, my intuition, I make the deal, then I get the accountants in. But you listen to them at top, at some point, most of them have talked about using their intuition. The difference I'm seeing is they're more open about it. Years ago, people would slip over to see me. They wouldn't have told people. Now I find, they say, I was at a dinner party last night, and a few of my cronies were all talking about you. And they'll say, this is my psychic. So a huge businessman a few years ago, I went to a friend of mine had a nightclub in London. I went to his a birthday party, and the room was packed really long. And I said, who's that guy at the end? Who is he? And he told me who he was. He said, very interesting, you should point him out. He was a billionaire by the time he was 33. He's one of the most innovative people alive. So he took me over and he introduced me to the guy. And he said, this is Anne, she's my business psychic. And he said, I use business psychics. It's much more open. I think one of the things I'm noticing, it's much more open now. People are much more open. Big names are much more open. When I first moved into the offices I'm in now, that was 16 years ago, it was all businessmen. Any women there were kind of filing, doing a bit of typing. And I arrived and you could see them. They were a bit put out. They were very stuffy. They were all people that had been made redundant or whatever from their middle management jobs. They're all quite a stuffy lot. And they were a bit put out by me there. And they took the mickey a bit. And it was a bit, oh, well, you're obviously here to earn a little bit of pin money. And then really big cars were showing up. And a few times they're sporting favourites. That's what got them. They see the big cars, or they'd see a chauffeur-driven car come and pick me up or whatever. But when the big sports stars showed up, they turned to jelly. So all these very sort of snotty men are suddenly going, oh my God, look who it is. And acting quite silly, actually, a bit like teenagers. So that I think there's been a number of these situations that start getting people thinking. So the business side of things is amazing. And I love teaching people how to handle this. I love to teach them in business how to listen to their intuition, how to use their instincts, because they think it's going to be, I don't know, I think they think they're going to levitate or something. They think it's something way beyond what it is. And it's not, it's subtle. And I teach them how to find the subtlety.
Yeah, there's for me, I love this because I started off in martial arts, but the Daoist martial arts is never just one thing. So it was about you didn't learn about fighting, you learned about healing. But then my teachers were the teachers who, you know, back in the 50s and 60s, they were the guys that were teaching the Russians, the Americans, the Chinese, the remote viewing, which is basically psychic, astral traveling, and psychic abilities. And then one of my jobs was to train empaths. And they had a group of because I'm quite empathic myself, and like Michelle, I sort of see the energy, I feel it, and you know, when somebody talks about something, I see it in energy form. You know, somebody who says a chair, I can see that chair, but I can see the vibration of that chair, and I see, you know, like the stuff that makes the chair. You know, the actual atoms swirling about, and it's just how my mind is. But my teacher, therefore. Well, my teacher, Shun, he was back in the 90s, 80s and 90s especially, he was creating empaths for businesses because they were using the empaths to listen in on business deals, to watch out on business deals, or you know, watch certain clients or certain people, you know, in interviews as well. You know, is that person legit? Is there, you know, are there things, you know, going on behind the scenes? So
who was that? Sorry, who was it they brought in?
It was my teacher was Malay Shun. Malay Shun. He was he was Chinese originally, but he was born in 1900s, so in the 80s he was 80 years old, but he was so established within the different governments and different agencies that he had been working with, especially businesses, and especially Saudi Arabia. He'd been working for over 20-30 years. And so it was, you know, and I would talk about this stuff, and people go, you what about, you know, you're a nutter, you know, that they don't use empaths. What you talk, psychics? What you talk, you know? But now it's becoming more and more established, and it's becoming more, you know, it's coming out far more. So and you know, when you think even things like they talk about like qigong and tai chi, when they say, oh, you know, that wavy hand stuff, why would you want to do that? And when you've got businesses doing it because it improves productivity, reduces absenteeism, and also their think tanks, they get them to do, and this is what he would teach me, especially with empaths, teaching the empaths qigong to help to channel their minds, because you know, when you've got a lot of information coming in, and or you're reading somebody, and you know that person's going through a lot of emotional turmoil themselves, you take that on. And you know, for an empath, it's like when you're listening to somebody, it's like running a marathon. You know, you literally feel that physically. So the whole point of the qigong and the meditation is to in essence anchor yourself, anchor down, so you feel it, but you don't take it fully on. You don't take that load on yourself. You learn to just observe and pay attention to it, rather than actually carry it yourself.
It's nice not to carry it. I think in the early days, most spiritual people, when they first start doing any healing or anything else, that initially they do start to take it on themselves, and they have to learn to step out of that and not let it happen. And otherwise, you just end up exhausted and tired and ill and in pain. So it's really nice not to draw that in.
Yeah, I've known so many people who like originally in the old days, like burning out, like healers, but you know, burning out because they were taking it all on. And it was in actual fact one of the guys, Fred Bleach, who teaches me osteopath and like the clicking techniques. And I did this thing with him where he did a session on me, checked my back. And then we did 8 patients that day. We did 8 patients. Then he checked my back at the end of the day, and he said, "This doesn't make sense. You're more relaxed now than you were at the beginning of the day." And I said, "Yeah, because I'm tapped in to the universe. You know, I call it the Tao, but you can call it whatever you like. You know, I'm tapped into that power, so I'm drawing that power in. So not only am I helping people, but I'm also helping myself as well. So by the end, because I've done like 12-hour days, I've gone to camps and done 12 hours of massage, 14 hours of massage. So you have to learn how to adjust, how to be able to cope with that, because otherwise, it will, if you run and you don't breathe, you'll collapse. So you have to learn to breathe and breathe correctly.
Yeah.
So it's a technique.
It's really interesting. I don't know if you heard of Seika Nikolic, but she's an incredible healer, and she looks better at the end of the day. She literally sees people all day long, and at the end of the day, she looks better than when she starts. And I was just thinking, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you just glow? And she's looking younger every year, somewhere or other. And I spoke to my old friend Steve Witchett, and he said, it's her agent's fee. I said, what do you mean agent's fee? He said, she keeps 10% for herself. So you keep a little bit of that energy, that gorgeous energy that's flowing through you and energize yourself so that you can carry on working, so you can carry on doing this great work.
I would like to learn that skill. That sounds like a wonderful skill. But that's something that I haven't, I humbly say I have not mastered that yet, to figure out how to. I definitely, one of my strengths that I've seen is that I am able to replenish myself quicker now, like really almost instantly. And really for me, in order to come back to that zone of having that clarity, is removing things that don't need to be there in my field, but like my natural state is like very happy and attuned, as long as the collective consciousness shifts are in that flow. And we're all like, unless we're all like, sometimes we all got kind of go through the muck together. Oh, where'd Boggie go? Boggie's gone again? I hope that we don't have to do a part 3 in a minute. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned if it does.
He usually sends a message when he's coming back. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
He might be able to pop back in. So, so it's interesting looking at the business side. This is what my next book will be about. Spirituality in business. And it is about just using your instinct. And one of the just a silly little thing, where it's kind of a little thing. I put on events in a certain hotel near where I am. I had a big training day coming up, and I phoned them a couple of weeks beforehand and said, is everything okay? I'm booked in. I've got dot amount of people coming. And they said, fine. But, this is where the instinct comes in. It was just a niggle. Most intuition I see as a niggle. And I kept being bothered by it. So I thought, well, they've reassured me, but I'm going to go down there. I went there, and the girl on the desk said, no, you're not. The venue, that part of the venue that you'd be using has been given to a wedding party. I said, and she was actually quite rude, and it happened twice at this company, and I ended up leaving. But that intuition, otherwise I'd have shown up there, and there would have just been a whole load of people in that room. I'd have had a whole load of delegates, nowhere to take them. But we all do that. We have that thing where it keeps bothering us. I think we all do it. The difference is we don't always listen, but we just go, don't know, I'm just not sure about this. We don't listen. It's a bit like you're meeting friends, and you say, where should we go? And you say, I don't fancy such and such a restaurant tonight. You've got no reason to say that. You've been there loads of times before. It's always been good, but you don't fancy it. But you end up going. And do you know what you do on the way home? You go, I knew I shouldn't have gone. I knew I shouldn't have done that. We all do it, but it's subtle. We expect it to be big, but it's not. It's quite subtle.
Yes. I just ended up at a ceremony this weekend that was a spiritual ceremony, and it was only because I followed my very subtle intuition. I was going to a yoga class, and I just saw the glow, and I just did a video on YouTube where it's about there's a concept in Buddhism called Dharma gates, and Dharma gates are when you see that glow and you actually walk through the door, and then you're in a different consciousness, you're in a different field. It's like it's kind of like aligning with your future self, because it's like your higher self is showing you this subtle doorway to step through, and we have so much opportunity from going through those doors, but we don't always do it. Sometimes we our energy is denser, like heavier, like because when you say I shouldn't go to that pub or whatever, and then you go and you feel like crap for and then the next 6 hours in the morning you have to that's the thing, then you'll have to recover, you know what I mean, from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the annoying thing is we know not to, but we go into logic. Totally. We let the logic, and we know, but that's what I try and teach the business people is when you've got a niggle, it's for a reason. You've got a niggle. I find if I feel a bit stressed about something, it's usually a sign to drop it. Some things you just feel really
Good one.
I don't often get stressed, but if I keep feeling stressed about something I'm working on, it's a sign to say, look, leave it, it's not right. The energy's not right. That's why I feel stressed. Because very few things, even when they're going up the wall, don't stress me. I just deal with them. But I get that stressy, agitated feeling. To me, it's a sign to let it go. So it's about learning the signs. It's about learning that saying there's a green light, go ahead. You know, what is that? And I help people to identify what it is to them personally. Because you've got within you, this is right, this isn't right. This works, this doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. I'm wondering about for something for my self-business, if it's appropriate to say that. For me, it's like having that interchange. It's been happening more over the last few weeks than it's happened kind of ever. I feel like I'm in a different cycle, but that interchange of energy with clients and having like, because it's like, I feel like over the last couple of years, I've gone through that interface of like, knowing that I'm worth it. You said that, like knowing that we have something to give. That's a huge, I think, first step to anybody in a holistic business. Right. And then once we get that, it's like, okay, now how do we get people to listen to us, or how do we embody that exchange of having more and more clients and that flow and building on that? I think that's a huge, that's what I'm working on right now, is like bringing that in more and more.
It's a really funny thing, but I feel that you get a client and you just put an amazing amount of energy and focus on them.